Welcome to The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Thursday, August the 13th, 2020.
My whole network is listening to you right now, and as are many millions of viewers. What's the stuff you want to tell us not to do or that we should do when we are talking about it? Because it's going to be historical. What happens in the media when something historic happens is we lend ourselves to superlatives, right? We start to talk about things with these words that make things make things feel bigger than they are. What are the dangers? What's the pitfall that we could fall into?
Just deal with the substance. Don't talk about what she looks like. Don't describe her in ways that... I'll give you one very good example. This whole concept of whether a woman is ambitious. What woman who is contending to be vice president of the United States isn't ambitious? And more importantly, what man who has occupied that office ever in our history wasn't both ambitious and hoping to be president one day? So why do we turn what is a good trait into something that's intended to be insulting? Let's stop talking about our clothes. Let's stop describing us in words that you wouldn't use to describe a man.
That was Valerie Jarrett, the former chief of staff in the White House for President Obama. And she was talking to Ali Velshi over the weekend on MSNBC about the sexism that women are subject to via the media, instructing the media about what they can do and should do and must do to properly cover women in politics. That was 2 days before Kamala Harris was unveiled, Senator Harris unveiled as the vice presidential pick of Joe Biden. Time's Up Now, an organization dedicated towards putting women front and center and fighting for equal pay and equal representation and a number of other very important issues concerning women, pay, visibility, work, made a statement earlier this week. Tina Chen, the president and CEO of Time's Up Now, issued a statement about Senator Kamala Harris, who, of course, is the candidate for vice president on the Democratic side. And here is her statement, quote, "This is a historic moment for our country and a welcome step towards building a government that truly represents the people that it serves. But like many women in public service across party lines, Senator Harris has been the subject of vicious attacks. In the face of sexist and racist attacks, we unequivocally have Harris's back. And we have other women's candidates' backs too. Through our We Have Her Back campaign, we are calling on the media to stamp out the kind of unfair coverage, double standards, and coded language that have held women, and especially women of color, from positions of power across party lines for far too long." Now, some of the examples of what Time's Up Now is citing is the following here, because they have not endorsed any candidate at all for elective office, even up to now. So this is part, I believe, of the statement here too from Tina Chen, the CEO and president of the company, Time's Up Now. And in the statement, it goes on to say in her statement, "Throughout the 2020 election cycle, Senator Harris has faced a sexist and racist double standard and double bind that we often see applied to women candidates, from mocking her ambition to focusing on her appearance and clothing rather than her qualifications and experience. Below are just a few examples." And there's 2 or 3 bullet points here. I'm going to read these. One Democratic donor remarked that she has, quote, too much ambition, and Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, said she can, quote, rub people the wrong way. And that was cited in the New York Times just 3 days ago, August the 10th, 2020. The second bullet point, Harris was repeatedly described as, quote, too warm or connecting too much with voters while being, quote, non-committal or vague about her policy positions. That was from Refinery in March of 2020, March the 8th. Bullet point number 3, a CNN political reporter tweeted about Senator Harris's sequined jacket. Quote, we kind of forced Kamala Harris to try on this awesome, oversized rainbow sequin jacket. She snapped it up. Now, that was from February 16th of 2019 on Twitter. Now, they didn't mention the CNN reporter's name, but I will be mentioning CNN reporters' names because CNN, of the media that I've been watching, the corporate news media that I've been watching lately, has done by far the worst job. And I'm not even going to include Fox because, of course, Fox by default is going to do the worst job. But between CNN and MSNBC, in just one day alone, CNN by far failed and fell very short indeed of we have her back. On this episode, a look at the sexism and misogyny and how CNN in particular covers Kamala Harris in just one day. And, of course, the continuation of voter education. The two states on this episode, Oregon and Pennsylvania. Next. Women have been in leadership positions forever. The things that Harriet Tubman did in this country, leading armies, leading battalions. The U.S. Army actually approached Harriet Tubman and asked her to lead hundreds of men into battle. I mean, in the Union, lead those men, and you never hear about it in history. Women have led for centuries. Women have done this for forever. They've been in politics for a long time, and maybe not always in elective office, but certainly have led movements here in the United States and beyond. It doesn't just go back 50 years. It goes back way beyond that, far further back. And only in the last 50 or 60 years have we seen and have we understood Fannie Lou Hamer prominently involved, telling the Democratic Party. Fannie Lou Hamer, a black woman who organized and who was critical to the movement in this country to uplift black people, and spoke truth to power and told the Democratic Party, enough is enough. You cannot play us cheap and take us for granted as black people. And we need and demand respect and justice, and we need to be prominently a part of what is going on here, because this is about us and it's about this country. We've seen many women, Shirley Chisholm, running for office, becoming the first woman to run for president in a major American political party. That's what Shirley Chisholm did as a member of the Democratic Party in 1972. A black woman, proud, standing tall, speaking truth to power. The Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm in New York, in Brooklyn. announced her run for office in 1972. And as the documentary says, Chisholm 72, unbought and unbossed. Go and watch that documentary. It's by Shola Lynch. First name Shola. Lynch, Lynch. She directs that documentary. It's a must watch. There are so many women who have led proudly. We can go back to Eleanor Roosevelt in the 1930s and 40s. And although she didn't have an officially elected position, she was very much somebody who counseled and led in her husband's administration, FDR. So there have been numerous other examples of this. Women who have led. And so the challenge for CNN is to do better. When you're using language, the kind of language that Don Lemon and MJ Lee and Jeff Zeleny used yesterday, it's inexcusable. MJ Lee and Jeff Zeleny calling or using the term attack dog in the same sentence with Kamala Harris. Oh, she's not going to be used as an attack dog. Oh, well, she wasn't brought here to be an attack dog. Never mind the context. It's the fact that you use that term at all to associate or even float in the minds of the viewer that somehow Senator Harris is an attack dog. Even if you're actually saying, well, she's not going to be used in that way. Why are you using that phrase in the first place? There are many ways to say that without having to use that particular term. And I am loath to repeat it anymore because republication doesn't help either. In the space of 2 hours, MJ Lee and Jeff Zeleny, who on my Twitter page at the popcorn REEL, I made sure I let them know, do not use that term. You are contributing to this sexism and misogyny when you do it. That's a misogynistic term. And I get it. Some people might say, well, they use it for men too, but does that make it right? Of course it doesn't. You've got Donald Trump calling women dogs. So why should I be silent about it when CNN either mentions or actively uses that same word? Why should I not say something about that? CNN has really failed miserably here, especially yesterday, Wednesday, August the 12th, 2020. In the space of an hour or two, as I just said, MJ Lee, and she is a reporter who reports on the news, and she is also an Asian American. Jeff Zeleny is a white male who reports on the news and in politics, just like MJ Lee does. And then you've got Don Lemon later on in the evening, that night on his show, saying, quote, next, how Kamala Harris is snapping right back at President Trump. Snapping? What snaps? What snapped in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963 at the heels of black people? Dogs. Bull Connor's dogs. So why on earth is Don Lemon using that kind of language? There's no excuse for any of it. And some of you perhaps might think, oh, Omar, come on. This is just ridiculous. Come on. No. This is the kind of stuff that does the most damage. These kinds of things that are not so subtle but are also subtle. Some of these things are bullhorns. Some of these things are dog whistles. Oh gosh, listen to me. But the point is that this is the kind of thing that Time's Up now has been talking about. And they did a letter on behalf of their campaign, We Have Her Back, entitled News Coverage for the Vice Presidential Candidate. They wrote this letter. It's an open letter dated a week ago today, August the 6th, 2020. And they addressed it to news division heads, editors-in-chiefs, bureau chiefs, political directors, editors, producers, reporters, and anchors. And it's a really good letter. And it's fairly long. I'm not going to read the entire thing. What it does at the end is it asks anybody who is reading the letter to add their name to it. So it's like a petition. And it says, tell the news media to keep sexist political attacks out of their election coverage. Well, they failed miserably at that. They've republished the stuff that Donald Trump said about Kamala Harris on Tuesday, the 11th of August. And as I said yesterday, you had 3 people who work at CNN on the air use these terms. And again, it's not that they had called Kamala Harris these terms, it's that they used them in conjunction with Kamala Harris. Or they mentioned these terms in conjunction with Senator Harris. And that is exactly what Time's Up Now and We Have Her Back, and quite frankly, people like myself and many, many others are telling the media to stop doing. You heard Valerie Jarrett at the top of this episode. Stop doing this. Here's part of the letter from August the 6th. And it went to people, it was addressed to people like Don Lemon. It was addressed to reporters like MJ Lee and Jeff Zeleny. I mean, for goodness sakes, how could you not see this? You really do have to check yourself. We are reaching out now because we are about to embark on this is the letter, on a historic moment once again, having a woman on a presidential campaign ticket. While you have already done significant reporting on the process, we know you are actively preparing for coverage about the specific Democratic vice presidential nominee. Now, this was on August the 6th of this year. Given how few women have reached this point, the sometimes disappointing coverage of the process to date, and the double standards we've seen in the public and media expectations of women leaders over the years, and even more so for black and brown women leaders, we wanted to respectfully share some thoughts with you about the media's role in the scrutiny and coverage of women and women of color candidates in general, and the vice presidential candidate in particular. Now, it goes on to talk about that we do this without knowing who Joe Biden's choice will be, etc., etc. And this is the thing that they deal with here. And I'm going to read these bullet points out. Now, this is what all of these folks received, right? There are multiple ways that media coverage over the years has contributed to the facts of the lack of diversity at the top of society's roles. For example, and here are a series of bullet points that I will read to you from this open letter from Time's Up Now. Bullet point 1, reporting on a woman's ambition as though the very nature of seeking political office, or any higher job for that matter, is not a mission of ambition. Bullet point 2, report relationships with partners, staff, colleagues, and donors are characterized differently if the woman is not seen as subservient or supportive. Bullet point 3, reporting on whether a woman is liked, in parentheses, a subjective metric at best, close parentheses, as though it is news when the, quote, likability, in quote, of men is never considered legitimate news. Bullet point 4, reporting even as asides in a story on a woman's looks, weight, tone of voice, attractiveness, and hair is sexist news coverage unless the same analysis is applied to every candidate. Bullet point 5, reporting on questions of electability of women is, in itself, a perpetuation of a stereotype about the ability of women to lead. Bullet point 6, reporting on doubts women may not be qualified leaders even when they have experience equal to or exceeding male leaders. Bullet point 7, reporting on the heritage of black women or women of color perpetuates a misunderstanding about who is legitimately American. And by the way, we're seeing this with Donald Trump Jr. and all these Trumpanzees who are putting out these ads questioning, is she black enough? That's going on right now about Senator Harris. And then finally, reporting on and using pictures of a woman's, particularly black women, show of anger at injustice or any other kind of passion in communication that perpetuates racist tropes that suggest unfairly that women are too emotional or irrational in their leadership or worse. Hate America, in quotes. Let me reread that. Reporting on and using pictures of a woman's, particularly black women, show of anger at injustice or any other kind of passion in communication perpetuates racist tropes that suggest unfairly that women are too emotional or irrational in their leadership or worse, quote, hate America. So those are the bullet points that the Time's Up Now organization in their open letter to all of these individuals, the news division heads, etc., for their We Have Her Back campaign, news coverage for the vice presidential candidate, outlined. And within a week, CNN in particular, and certainly Fox, have absolutely failed. Totally failed. And CNN regards itself as the world leader in news, and it's now become, or has long been, or maybe has grown into, one of the leaders in sexism in their broadcasts and how they cover women. So when Valerie Jarrett, the former chief of staff at the White House for President Obama, is telling the media, MSNBC, over the weekend, this past weekend, that, look, we want you to just cover women the way you'd cover men and stop using all of these terms. That obviously fell on deaf ears at CNN and Fox. MSNBC has been relatively good. They've been very good with the coverage that I've watched of theirs, the opportunities that I've had to watch. Rachel Maddow last night was very good. She never mentioned those words that I talked about that Don Lemon mentioned or that MJ Lee and Jeff Zeleny mentioned. She covered Senator Harris in a gender-neutral way. I think that CNN, never mind Fox, Fox is just disgusting. And Fox needs to change as well. That doesn't mean I dismiss their responsibilities. But CNN has been pitiful here. And in that same day, but particularly during Don Lemon's show that he does at night, in that same hour, in his show, a video of that QAnon whack job. And by the way, these folks aren't just whack jobs. These folks are extremely dangerous. These QAnon people. Some of the things that they're doing and what they think and the conspiracies that they throw up, these theories, these people actually believe this stuff. And not only that, I mean, when you believe that politicians are eating children, and that's a part of your freaking dogma, you actually verbalize that, and you think that every politician in the Democratic Party does these kinds of things, and you commit violence and the FBI has you down as a terrorist organization, and you've got 14 people who run under your banner on the Republican side, and one of them is arrested for domestic violence the night before the election primary that he has in Connecticut, and then you've got voters in Connecticut the next day voting for him in such a fashion that he's now in a runoff, he's in a dead heat with the other Republican running in that primary. And then you had 2 people from that QAnon group winning their primaries, including one in Georgia, who has said racist and misogynistic and anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic things and anti-Muslim things, anti-Islamic things. And then who, in her quote-unquote victory speech, in front of a group of people, no mask, no physical distancing, women on the stage with her, and she's saying the B word, calling Speaker Nancy Pelosi the B word and saying the full word, and then you guys at CNN republish that and actually play that word. Then you've got someone who I interviewed here a few months ago, Bakari Sellers, using the N-word but saying the whole word. I get it. It was in the context of, well, this is what 3 years ago at Charlottesville, this is what they were saying. But we don't need to hear that full word, do we? Do we? I don't think we do. It was just a very strange night on CNN last night, to say the least. All of that happened within the space of an hour. You had that being said, you had the republication of this racist and misogynist and Islamophobic woman who ended up winning, the politician, oh gosh. No, I'm not being sexist because politicians, they think this way. And obviously this particular person thinks this way and then says it, just like Donald Trump does. This is really the evil that we've got to confront. And the job gets harder when the media republishes this. And I had a conversation a month or 2 ago with a guest who I hopefully will have an opportunity to speak to again in the next little while, the next few weeks or months, to talk more about the subject matter, about women and about misogyny and about toxic masculinity, because I just think this is a really important subject, and I would really like to have that conversation here, and I think it's important, and particularly to challenge men to be better and to unlearn this language. I know women have to unlearn it too, but it's men who are the ones who are perpetuating and perpetrating this. And it has deadly consequences. If we have to be educators, then let's educate and let's do it the right way. I mean, there's more than one way to do it, but one way to do it is not to do it is to do what CNN's been doing. Republishing these kinds of videos. I get it, you want to inform your viewers, but do you have to show the person saying this? And what's more, of course, people cheered it. So it says a whole lot about a large cross-section of the American society, that people would cheer that. Nobody booed it. Nobody in that room said boo. Nobody said ooh. Nobody said any of that. They all cheered. So they all approve of that and they agree with it. And as Roland Martin said a few days ago, America loves misogyny. Americans love sexism. And I think that's very true. This is a tremendously sexist and misogynistic country that we are living in. There's no question about that. You had 53% of white women who turned their backs on voting for a Democrat who warned you about Donald Trump. They chose to vote for Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton, even though Donald Trump has said such things as grab them by the... Even though Donald Trump had said things like women should be put in prison for daring to exercise choices over their body and what to do. Or if they have an abortion, they should have a punishment of prison. That's what he said. And those aren't the only issues that women are... Listen, I don't want to perpetuate sexism myself by suggesting that those are the only two things women are concerned about. There's lots of things women are concerned about. But Donald Trump did not check any of the boxes for those concerns. But there are an awful lot of women, white women specifically, who said, yeah, we don't want Hillary Clinton in there. And much of that may be due to some of the baggage that Hillary Clinton carries, of course. But you cannot tell me that some of it did not have some intrinsic rooting in misogyny. I'm not going to sit here and say that most of it was misogynistic, but I do think that some of it was. Not to mention, I think the bulk of it was that Hillary Clinton was not a popular figure. And it wasn't just because of misogyny. It was because of some of the policies. It was because of the whole Clinton era. People, I think, did have some fatigue around that. But there's no doubt that there was an underlying misogyny to some of that as well. And there's no question that there are women out here who are also misogynist. But the point is that networks like CNN, Fox, MSNBC have to be better. MSNBC has been better, I must say. So I'm going to leave them to the side here. I think MSNBC has been much better than either Fox or CNN about covering Senator Harris. The bottom line for CNN, for Fox, anybody else who uses the bottom line then for CNN, Fox, and for anybody else that uses such misogynistic language, uses any of these kinds of things to describe a woman who is in politics, stop the misogyny, stop the genderizing, cover female politicians in the same way you cover men. Stop talking about their fashions. Look, I've been guilty of this. I've said things like, oh, I like her shoes. That I've got to look at that too. I mean, am I not participating in the same thing? Am I not doing that? I mean, if I say that I like Kamala Harris's shoes, am I not participating in that? Particularly if I see President Barack Obama's shoes and I don't say anything? I mean, certainly there's sexism there, isn't there? I would say so. That would render me sexist if I did that and didn't also comment on his style of dress, even though I have commented on his style of dress many times. In fact, I have commented on male politicians' style of dress, positively or negatively. I found myself commenting on Nancy Pelosi's fashion sense. I can be very honest about that, and that is sexist. I absolutely can admit that. And I can sit here and say, well, women's fashions are more varied and more colorful and more plentiful and more inventive and innovative and all of those kinds of things. Maybe I can offer those as excuses, but they are not justifications, and they cannot be ever justifying my objectification and scrutiny of a woman's fashion sense. I think that if you are at a fashion show and you are sitting there watching a woman, or a man for that matter, walking down the runway in a fashion, and there's a new line of clothing, you can comment about that to your heart's content, right? I don't think that there's anything there that renders sexism an issue. Perhaps it does, though. Perhaps it does, because if a woman is wearing something on the order of a Victoria's Secret outfit, right, and then there's men who have things on in the same way, but nobody talks about them, is that not the same sexism? I would say so. But none of this excuses the misogyny or the sexism. I mean, I can sit here and say, well, men's fashions haven't changed in 100 years and they're all the same and they're boring. But that still does not excuse the comments made about women and how they look. Because we do not generally say that about men and how they look. Look, I can tell you, I have done, and I'm not the only one. I'm not trying to separate myself out. But I have commented on men's fashions on the Academy Awards as well. Men's tuxedos that look awful. Men, the color ensemble is terrible. What is Pharrell doing, wearing capri shorts with a tux top? I've commented on things like that at the Oscars, at the red carpet. I've commented on women who wear certain things as well. I guess it's just this objectification that's the problem. I mean, that is for me the problem, obviously, and that's part of the sexism. We're objectifying people. Men and women get objectified, but it is women in a sexist, patriarchal culture and society, a misogynistic society that's rife with toxic masculinity, that I think this also is a part of. So that's the real operative theme here that underlines all of this. And I think that MJ Lee, who is Asian American, Jeff Zeleny, who is a white male, and Don Lemon, who is a black man, really should rethink what they've said here and how they are saying it. And not just them, all of the bosses of these companies. And they are misogynistic themselves. And they are all men, and all white men as well. The vast majority of these people that this letter from Time's Up Now has gone to are white men. And they are probably white men over 60. All of these people are rooted in a long tradition of this kind of misogynistic language, which is much worse, obviously, in the 1950s and 60s and into the 70s and even the 80s. It's not gone away. And dare I say the 90s as well. I mean the whole thing about what Hillary Clinton said, I'm not going to be Tammy Wynette standing by her man and baking cookies in the kitchen. That was a very interesting moment. A lot of people were very upset with that comment from Hillary Clinton that was certainly construed as misogynistic and sexist. So this happens amongst people of the same gender. But in any event, we all have to do better, not just CNN or Fox or any of these other outlets who have been very, very bad in terms of covering Senator Harris. We all have to do better in our lives in confronting this misogyny and this sexism. And if we really want a better place for ourselves, a better country for our children, for future generations, we have to do the work. And maybe you might think it's exhausting to have to do the work, but you have to do it. What do you think it was for people in the civil rights movement to do this work? And then getting killed for it in many cases, killed during their line of work. What do you think it was for Rosa Parks, for John Lewis, for Dr. King, for Coretta Scott King, for Diane Nash, for Ella Baker? What do you think it was for them? The Montgomery bus boycott in 55 and 56. What do you think it was to be sitting at lunch counters and not moving while white men were throwing bottles at you and setting you alight on fire, burning cigarettes on your skin, throwing hot coffee on you, scalding you with it? What do you think that was? And some people out there are, oh, this is too exhausting. Really? And some of you, oh, I can't wear a mask. I did play you a few minutes yesterday in yesterday's episode from Susan Bro and her comments about her daughter Heather Heyer at a service honoring Heyer, just literally about 3 or 4 days after she had been murdered by this white racist in Charlottesville. And she said, look, do not say, oh, I can't get involved here. Get involved. Point a finger at yourself. Jab it into yourself and say, look, I am going to kick up a fuss. I'm going to say something. Speak up. It's what John Lewis asked you to do too. Vote. Get involved. Be better. If you're going to require that the country be better, then you also have to be. It's what John F. Kennedy said, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Well, if you want a better country, you also have to be a part of being a better person to facilitate that better country that you want. You see, the issue with Donald Trump and co. is that they are not asking you to be better people. They are not challenging you to be better, nor, quite frankly, is the corporate news media. They are saying that you just have to sit there, they meaning Trump and the Republicans, you just have to sit there and get rid of all these groups that you do not like. Hate them. That's the lazy, poisonous, violent, dangerous, toxic way out for them. They're not galvanized to be better people. They're galvanized to be lazy, racist, hateful, misogynistic people. It's the easiest and laziest thing to do, is to challenge people to be worse and tell them to be worse, because that really does not involve a lot of effort, really. Although some people would disagree with me and say, if you hate that much, there's got to be a lot of effort to it. And I don't entirely disagree with that. But it is very easy to walk past that homeless person on the street and not give that person money. It is easy for that to happen. Isn't that a form of hate and ignorance? And I'm going to just pretend that this person doesn't exist, and I'm going to look down on that person, when you really should be looking up at the power structure that has put that homeless person there in the first place. I'm going to paraphrase something that Dr. King once said. It is not a matter of what will happen to me if I give that beggar some money. The question will be, what will happen to the beggar if I do not? And that is the approach that we should be taking here with all of these issues. We have to start looking ourselves in the mirror as well. And so while Time's Up has a good open letter here regarding the news coverage for Senator Kamala Harris, and this was written before she became the VP candidate pick for Joe Biden, there really should be an open letter for ourselves. We should be drafting that letter ourselves and challenging ourselves to be better when it comes to dealing with these issues of misogyny and sexism and toxic masculinity, which I have talked about here in the past on this podcast, and shall be having conversations with guests about in the future again. Because particularly men and boys have to take this on. And it doesn't have to be a test of whether you... This is, again, something I talked about with AOC when she rightly got up and challenged Ted Yoho for his sexist remarks, right? See, that happened a few weeks ago. A Republican there saying, a white male Republican politician calling AOC the B word, right? And now CNN plays this QAnon freak and has her saying the same word about Speaker Pelosi. And when AOC challenged Ted Yoho, she made it very clear, having a daughter does not make you a decent person, does not make you decent. So that's the other thing for men. Stop hiding behind, well, I have a wife and I have a daughter. That has got nothing to do with anything. This is about you and how you behave and how you think. So think twice. And when you hear people using this kind of language, this sexist language, this misogynistic language, make sure you speak up and say, no, that's not how I address women. And really, that's not the kind of thing you should be saying about girls at all or women at all. Challenge them to be better. Say that there's a different kind of language to use. You can say, how do you like it if someone said that about someone that you care about? But I find that the better thing to say is, why do you say that kind of thing? Why? Why do you call a woman that? And then just say to them that there's a way to avoid doing that, and you can treat women with respect, and you must treat them with respect, and treat girls with respect. There's going to be lots of men who fight angrily against that kind of thing and are violently opposed in their verbal responses. But we all have to do better if we want to live in a better place. Welcome back. Oregon. Oregon is a state that, of course, has had a lot of turmoil lately with Donald Trump sending in the feds, who really are border patrol people who were unmarked, and all the things that they were doing in July and into August, and they finally were kicked out. But this is not over with these cities and states where all of these Gestapo are coming in. This is all an intimidation operation to do with voting and suppressing the vote. Donald Trump is trying any and everything to make sure he does not go to jail. He does not go to prison. He's trying to stay out of prison when July the 20th, 2021 comes and he is booted out of office. I am more confident than ever that that will happen, but you have to vote, and vote early. I have put a poll on my Twitter page at the Popcorn REEL. And please follow me on Twitter. And I have a poll up there about whether or not you will be voting early. And if so, will you vote early by mail, vote in person, or will you decide to vote on election day? Please get involved with that poll. I posted it on Thursday, August the 13th, 2020 for a 24-hour period. So if you have listened to this edition of the Politicrat podcast within a 24-hour period or earlier, please do, if you're on Twitter, please do get in touch with that poll and give your answer, because I think it's more important than ever to vote early. And in Oregon, there really isn't such a thing as early voting, because in Oregon, there is vote by mail. The whole state is entirely vote by mail. And that vote by mail typically starts in early October. So there really isn't a case of so-called early voting there. So you go to sos.oregon.gov. That's sos.oregon. That's oregon.gov. sos.oregon.gov. You enter that in the search bar, boom. Then you come up with the smiling face of Bev Clarno. She is the Oregon Secretary of State. Underneath her smiling face, you will find 4 tabs. One says business and one says voting and elections. You want to go, and there's state archives and audits, but you want to get to voting and elections. It's in a blue box. Click on voting and elections, and that will take you to a comprehensive page. It's a really good website. You will see current election, register to vote. So if you want to register to vote, make sure you click on register to vote. There's a number of other boxes as well. But if you want to go and register to vote, you click on register to vote. And then there is something that says Oregon Online Voter Registration. Then it says register to vote now in blue. You click on that and you just go through the prompts. And that's how you register to vote. You can register to vote online there. It's terrific. Remember something about Oregon. You have to be at least 16 years of age to register to vote in Oregon. So you can register to vote at 16. You can't vote yet at 16 in Oregon, and pretty much in every state. You can't vote until you're age 18, or at least approaching your 18th birthday, something like that. But the point is, if you are 16 in Oregon, you can register to vote, but you won't be able to vote. So that's what you do if you want to register to vote in Oregon. It's very easy to do. And if you want to check your voter registration, you can also do that. Oregon is remarkably easy. I do like this website. It's no thrills, but it does get you to pretty much anywhere you want to go. And if you want to check if you are registered, that same page, sos.oregon.gov, click on voting and elections. And again, you see these green boxes. As I said to you earlier, there's one that says register to vote, and there's one next to it that says my vote. You click on the green box under voting and elections that says my vote. And what you do there is check your voter registration. It says go to my vote now in blue once you get to that page that's headed my vote. You click on go to my vote now, and then you just are taken to a page where you enter your first and last name and date of birth, and go on from there, follow the prompts to find out if you are registered to vote in Oregon. Remember, you should be checking your voter registration, as I say, every single week from now through the end of October. I would strongly advise that. Do not lapse on that. Set your alarm every week, once a week, boom. That's when you're going to go online and check to see if you are registered to vote. And if you haven't registered to vote in any state, please make sure you do that now. The great thing about Oregon is they are vote by mail completely. There is no in-person voting in Oregon. They've been doing vote by mail for many years. It has been very good. It's been safe. It's been accurate. It's been reliable. And especially now that you've got Postmaster General Louis DeJoy destroying democracy and committing federal offenses, quite frankly, by slowing down mail communications in the U.S. Postal Service. That's a felony, folks. Interfering with the mail delivery, that's exactly what that is. And quite frankly, he should be impeached. And they're doing all this now because, of course, we are now 83 days or 82 days away from the general election. 82. So this is why they're doing this now. They know that Congress and the House Democrats are not going to do a damn thing about this, and they really should be. He should be testifying. He should be impeached. He really should, Louis DeJoy. So anyway, that's voting in Oregon. Registering to vote. As I've told you, it's very easy to do. The deadline to register to vote is October the 13th in Oregon. That's the deadline to register. That's 21 days before Election Day. And there's so much more information on Oregon and voting in Oregon. That site is a very good site. It's sos.oregon.gov, and then you click on voting and elections. Very, very good site to go to as far as that is concerned. October 13th is the deadline to register to vote in Oregon. Please, please do not wait. You can register to vote in person, online, as I've just told you, or by mail. But look, please contact your Oregon Board of Elections or the Secretary of State or your local Board of Elections and tell them you want your ballot early, or go and ask for the ballot. Oregon also has drop boxes, and Donald Trump has been getting lawyers throughout the country to eliminate drop boxes, particularly in states like Pennsylvania and Ohio that have these drop boxes. They don't want people to even put these things in drop boxes. And that's the way you bypass the US mail. And how slow it is that if you have a drop box location that you can go to where there are drop boxes all over a state or all over a county where you can drop off your mail-in ballot, it's even quicker because you don't have to rely on the slowdown of Louis DeJoy and the illegality of Louis DeJoy telling postal workers not to deliver mail, restricting the times that they can deal with the mail and send it out to you. That's the thing about the drop boxes that are especially good. But the funding for the post offices has not been provided efficiently or very much of it. There's no funding at all for election protection. Mitch McConnell is sitting on his duff, despite the fact that the House Democrats passed a bill at the beginning of last year dealing with election protection, and he's blocked 2 election protection bills in the Senate. They're not even in committee in the Senate. Mitch McConnell is not interested in upholding your right to cast your vote. He is interested in maintaining power and keeping an oligarchy in place and keeping tyranny in place. This guy already violated the Constitution when he refused Merrick Garland, a Republican for God's sake, a hearing before the Senate as President Obama's pick. So this isn't even about left and right. This is about democracy being under attack, any semblance of democracy being completely eviscerated. So I say that about Oregon, and the stakes are very high. Oregon is a very good state for voting. It's had a great tradition over the last few years with mail-in voting. It's been very, very good. When I come back, a swing state to talk about, Pennsylvania. Welcome back. Pennsylvania now. And in Pennsylvania, you need to go to the search engine, or the web browser address bar, and type in votespa.com. That's VOTES as in Sam, P as in Paul, A as in Apple.com. Votespa.com. There, what you will find is something with the Pittsburgh Penguins. If you're an NHL fan, and I'm an NHL fan, National Hockey League fan, you might appreciate it. And if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, I'm not. But if you are, you may go into that. You might want to do that. They've got this partnership to boost voter participation. You can learn more. And that is important. But what you want to do is scroll down past the logo of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and you will see a number of headings: register to vote, check your registration status, mail-in absentee ballots, etc., right across there. The first two, if you are interested in registering to vote, you will want to look at that. You click on register to vote and you follow the prompts there. The deadline to register to vote in Pennsylvania for the November 3rd election is October the 19th. That's 2 weeks before the election. So do not wait. Again, don't wait till October the 19th to register, please. Do not do that. Please do not do that. So you can register to vote online no later than October the 19th. You can register to vote by mail no later than October the 19th. It must be received by then. No later than October the 19th, that mail must be received. And with what I've just talked about with the Postal Service, you do not, and the Postmaster General especially, you do not want to be relying on mail. If you do mail, you want to make sure you send out that registration right now on August the 13th. That's what you should do. In person, you can go in right now. The deadline in person is the same. It's October the 19th in Pennsylvania. But like I say, it's August. I know there's a pandemic on. Make sure you protect yourselves. Wear a mask, please. Wear gloves as well, quite frankly. But, again, protect yourself. Go to your county office in Pennsylvania and say, look, I'd like to have a registration form, vote by registration, a register to vote form. And I'd like to have a ballot, please, as well. If you're a registered voter already, you can ask for that. But you can also get this ballot online, this voter registration form online. You can do that. So the voter registration application, you can download that blank voter registration form, or you can just follow the prompts. And you can register to vote online in Pennsylvania. You can do that. So you can just follow the prompts to register to vote. And there are, 11 or 12 questions or whatever it is, 13, 14, whatever, 15 questions. And there's one at the end, number 15 is mail-in ballot. If you would like to receive mail-in ballots for the remainder of this year, and automatic ones, you can check yes or no. And you just follow the prompts. Now, with what's going on with mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania, it must be received in your county office by 5 p.m. on October the 27th. If you plan to vote by mail, that ballot must be received by 5 p.m. Eastern Time in the county office that you are sending it to by mail, no later than 5 p.m. on October 27th of this year. This is why this is so important. And I'm going to be compiling this list in the next few days because I'm getting toward the end of all of these states. Since I'm now in the P, right, Pennsylvania. So we're getting toward the end of the alphabet and the end of all the 50 states. You really must vote by mail right now, or certainly ask for a vote by mail ballot, mail-in ballot, same thing. Absentee, it's all the same thing. Trump's trying to confuse everybody. If you are in Pennsylvania and you plan to vote by mail in the November 3rd election, that application must be completed and received in the county you live in, the office of that county you're mailing it back to, no later than 5 p.m. on October the 27th. And they say a late application will not be accepted, even if it was postmarked before the deadline. This is something that Trump wants. And Pennsylvania, which is now a so-called swing state, is now or has implemented this. So even if you've postmarked your ballot that you've mailed in before the deadline, if it is not received before 5 p.m. on October the 27th, in the county office you're mailing it to. It doesn't matter. Which is why you have to start mailing these things in right now. Which is why you have to go to your county office yourself and ask for a mail-in ballot. Ask for it in person. Now, they've got some other stuff here that talks about November the 3rd, but look. And I know some people have responded to the poll that I put up about, are you early voting by mail or in person, or are you going to vote on November 3rd? And there are some people who've answered with, I'm voting in person November 3rd. Now, there are people, as I've said, who love to do that. I am going to be voting early in person. But look, you cannot leave this to chance. To those of you who are voting on November 3rd and you want to do that, I hope that you protect yourself and you're safe in terms of your mask. You put all that on. But remember, please, as particularly if you are a black person or an Asian American or a Latinx or a Native American, that and you live in a neighborhood that is predominantly populated with people who look like you do. I just want to warn you, and particularly also if you are in a Republican state, Republican control, I just want to warn you, if you are going to vote on November 3rd, be prepared for long lines. We've seen this already in Atlanta. We saw this in the primary in Atlanta back in June. We saw this in Kentucky back in June and July. I think it was July. We saw this in Wisconsin, Milwaukee particularly, back in April. We've seen this in Houston in the primaries. We saw this in South Carolina in the primary. I mean, just to let you know, if you're going to vote on November 3rd, that is the chance that you are willing to take. That is the risk you are willing to take, to be in a line for long hours. And therefore, in the middle of a pandemic and a flu season, risk yourself being open to getting coronavirus. And people are going to risk their lives voting, literally, to get rid of this menace. But I do want those individuals who are voting on November 3rd to know that you can vote much earlier than that. You do not have to forsake your hourly paycheck. Which is why I'm taking these steps and trying to educate people with this daily accounting for each of these states. And again, I'm going to put this all on an electronic form so that you can see all of these states, because this is really important. So if you want to register to vote, that's how you do it in Pennsylvania. Voter registration application online. You go to votespa.com. And as I said, you can also check your registration status. If you want to check your voter registration, you click on check your voter registration status and you just follow the prompts. It's very easy. These two sites, I can say, are very easy. Oregon and Pennsylvania. Very easy. There's lots of education on the PA site. How to register, become a poll worker, election security, contact your election officials, how you register. It's terrific. It's really good. The voter registration deadline, once again, in Pennsylvania is October the 19th. So I think that's very, very important to consider that. And as for issues with early voting, if you're looking at early voting in Pennsylvania, because I think that's important to let people know whether there is any or not, it varies by county. In Pennsylvania, there isn't really an official early voting. They really don't. They don't really have it in Pennsylvania. But the proviso on that is it is discretionary and it varies by county. So if you are in Pennsylvania, you will have to contact your local county election office, because there are some counties that may make mail ballots available to voters in person. up to 50 days before Election Day. So that means sometime next month in September, people in Pennsylvania, some of you in Pennsylvania, may be able to vote in person early in September. But what you have to do is inquire about that for your county that you live in. Now, you can't live in one county. Let's say you live in Bucks County in Pennsylvania, and they don't offer this option for you to vote 50 days in advance. And then you go to another county, say Erie County. I believe that's the county. I know there's Erie, Pennsylvania. I believe there's Erie County as well. But let's say you go to Erie County or another county in Pennsylvania. You leave where you live in Bucks County and try to go into a different county in Pennsylvania and vote. You cannot do that. That's illegal. You've got to vote in the county you live in. That makes sense, right? So the point I'm making is that if you live in Pennsylvania, and if your county that you live in offers this opportunity to vote in person, mail ballots available to voters in person, you may be able to get those 50 days before the election. That means sometime next month, September 2020, you can actually go in person to your county office and get one of those ballots. But you have to contact your county office of Board of Elections office in Pennsylvania to find out more. So there's no early voting in Pennsylvania. Mail ballots can be dropped off at the county office in person until Election Day. So there's really no in-person voting in Pennsylvania. But I did tell you earlier that you have to have mail-in ballots. If you're mailing them in, they have to be received no later than 5 p.m. on October the 27th for this November election. I would advise you to mail it in now. I would advise you, even better, to go in person and drop it off at the office. That's what I would advise you to do. Thank you very much indeed for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.